that support us and support our progress forward.
I learned the Baltimore Catechism, why did God make me, God made me chose because He said be happy with Him in heaven. And I can remember rushing to church before the gospel was finished, because if you didn't get there before it was finished, then you committed a moral sin. So that's what I grew up with. And you prayed to Mary because Mary could calm down Jesus. Jesus could calm down. So we solved fear. So 6 weeks ago, when I got married, my nieces and nephews and Richards, they toasted us. And they were in their 20s and early 30s. And they just didn't they grew up thinking, what's the deal? I mean, what? People are having a hard time with this? They just didn't get it. And I had a niece and nephew who couldn't come, but they were raised very staunch, rigid Baptists. My sister believes that I'm going against God's will and I shouldn't do it. My niece and nephew are still kind of on the fundamentalist route for it as a Baptist, but their thing is, what? Who cares? It just I think we're changing. Our world is changing very, very rapidly, and so when I came out as a gay man, I needed the gay ghetto to protect me. I don't need a gay ghetto to protect me anymore. I want to surround myself with some like-minded people, and I'm finding those like-minded people are also straight. So I think we're going to, and I certainly say this as an alderman who happens to be gay. It's just not a big deal. When they announced during one of our in City Hall during one of our meetings that Richard and I had been married, and everyone stood up and applauded. It's just they didn't care. And these were people I thought, some of them on the South Side, very strong churches. Maybe they would have a problem with it, but they didn't. So I think we're going to go in the direction of church where I guess people can impose their rules, but we're just going to say, sure, yeah, whatever. And we're just going to keep focusing on what church means for us. And we just don't care about that kind of stuff. Europe did a long time ago. I think we're going that direction. I do like Catholicism in the sense that when I am interacting with other politicians, I can tell if they grew up Catholic. I can tell because we do things from a sense of community. There's this working together, and it's not me against them. It's working together. It's just which I like a lot. I hope that as we increasingly become a more narcissistic society, and it is, that we never let go of that social justice and caring for one another. I think we're going to be going through some rough times economically and working through the budget, and it's going to be hell. I think I'm hoping that we'll bring this closer together. Hard times. I see hard times ahead.
Yeah, I think that the church will always be here. So for that reason alone, I'm hugely optimistic. I think Dignity will be around. I think he's probably going to look differently. I think we'll have other partners, straight partners as well. Because as everyone said here, is that we are involved. And less persons are entering, forming, religious communities. Their choice of religion is quite different from all the religions. And some people choose not to even say I'm affiliated. They say I'm more spiritual than I am religious. And so people may decide to come to Dignity or go to another parish or another organization, to express their religious faith. I choose the Catholic tradition of expressing my faith. Others might choose a different tradition. I think all of those traditions, we will exist for those persons who want to express their tradition. But I do believe there will be challenges, as there always have been, as you heard from the 70s from on to this decade. I don't think there's ever a time when things didn't have a challenge. And in fact, it made us stronger. And there's, valleys, peaks, and hills, but we get through it. I don't think we know exactly how we're going to look like on the other side, but I think we can be confident that we will be quite different, but we won't be less dynamic. We will continue to speak out. We will continue not to be silent. And I think that's our tradition, which should be our tradition. And I think that's the Christian, that's the humanity, that's the sense of community that we want to be a part of. Whether you're Catholic, Protestant, I think being a Christian and speaking out, the injustices, that's what we're here for. And for that reason, we'll be around a long time.
To wrap up, before we open it up to questions and comments, when I see a gentleman over here who has a question and comment, I want to make a little bit of a comment. This summer I went to France, and it was really, it was a tour that was designed around history and the history of the church. And we went to lots and lots of churches, and of course, at a certain point, you're, the 50th church, you see, you're losing perspective. You don't know what you've seen before. But anyway, we went into this chapel, and it was a 9th century chapel. I remember, it was a 9th century basilica, and then we entered an 11th century chapel. And, we're all going, oh, wow, great. And, well, they had, really interestingly, in the 11th century, they had created all of these frescoes that were being renewed and renovated, and they were all of the signs of the zodiac, which oddly enough, in a church, I thought, wow, really interesting. So I'm going along, looking at Aquarius and Pisces, and I came upon Gemini. And the Gemini fresco had two naked men holding hands, looking at each other longingly and lovingly. And my first reaction was, boy, those two guys really do like each other. My second reflection was, this is the 11th century, this is in the middle of a church. Looking at this, no one's going to look at this and not see the obvious. We have this idea that, what dignity is about today is something very new, and that the church in the past was always this repressive thing. And I'm kind of jumping off things that Linda was saying. Yes, there are these moments of repression in the church, but there are also these moments in the church which are just shockingly open. This piece of art was obviously commissioned in the 11th century, and it was openly commissioned, and the person who created it and the people who commissioned it must have been aware. It couldn't be that anybody's that bad off. They are aware of what Gemini is symbolizing, and symbolizing for that church and for anybody visiting. And we've always been present. We've always been in the church, and we always will be, is I think something that the panelists were saying. Now, going to the gentleman who had his hand up a little while back, I want to open this up so that everybody can have a question and answer period and kind of a free-for-all where everyone gets to kind of jump in and say what they want to say.
I was just going to observe that Alderman Mell's daughter, when she and her partner were getting married over in Iowa, announced it in the state legislature, and they applauded.
I have some friends, professional guys, and they belong to St. Gertrude's Parish on the north side. And what I see happening, and I'm not going to make a universal generalization about it, but it seems to me that in It's not certainly every parish in the archdiocese, but in parishes such as St. Gertrude's, that gay people are being, if you will, normalized into the congregation. It's the same big deal that it's not a big deal, say, in the secular world. At least, for example, in the model of St. Gertrude's, these are people that are just really fully participating in that particular parish. So I know that, that's, the church is local, some say politics is local. But do you see that as a trend, if you will, a mainstreaming, if you will?
He was on the school board. I mean, one gay man was on the school board at St. Gertrude, and they had lesbian and gay families there. It's a very comfortable place to be. You still can't get married.
See that, right, that's
But it is a very comfortable place to be. I wish you could get married. I've been with Richard 21 years. Getting married made a difference. So
But James, you're not married, you're
I'm
civil
civil
union.
union.
I also think that really the goal of dignity would be to run a business.
Yes.
So in other words, when a church would become, because I love, like we have baptism, or we have little kids come, and just variety, that's what church is. And I think going back, I think there are becoming more welcoming parishes, and that's wonderful, because for whatever level, they do. But I think until it can be, where it's totally accepted, there is a need for dignity, and in terms of women's groups, et cetera, for women's issues. Because, again, you said it's always good as local. If that pastor leaves, and someone else comes in, and the wave of priests coming in, don't look like they lean left to me, and the next cardinal we get to, the same thing.
You're speaking of St. Gertrude's, I don't know if you know my friend Rob Susina.
Sure.
Okay, Rob, during my time, Rob was the first lay minister at Dignity. He was actually a member of the team, which was I think in looking for a woman and then opening the ministerial route to laity, I think Dignity was ahead of its time, because we're talking about the late 70s. I don't know if anybody else knew John Fahey, who was the pastor of St. Clements. Now, another friend of mine, Mike Manning, who's moved to Florida, he used to go to St. Clements, which is a very gay-friendly church. And then he died this week. He was 88 years old and married in California. So after he retired, he went to California and remarried. And he has his wife, Joan, who is living after him.
Well, that priest at St. Clement said that if I forbid divorced Catholics and LGBT Catholics to come to this church, it would be empty.
James, I'm going to come about saying that you were married, because of course, what do we call it when two people make a lifetime commitment to each other in our culture? We call it marriage. And now we're like making sure that we don't call it marriage. It's going to be civil union. If you ask a 2-year-old what just happened to James and Richard,
They got married.
we need to do that.
There was a 3-year-old girl who attended the wedding who said, you know what, Mommy and Daddy, that's the kind of wedding I want.
I think also, talking about St. Bert's and many other parishes that have become very welcoming, certainly there is a long history of social justice in that parish and welcoming inclusion, but ultimately it is at the grace of the pastor and the grace of the archdiocese that is allowed to continue to happen, and things are changing along that way.